This video goes beyond just the ordinary lubrication of the driveline splines and gets into actually removing and opening up the transmission. 2 years and 6,000 miles after I made this video, the bike continues to shift and run great. Fortunately, there are shortcut methods to lubing the clutch splines and final drive, so a lot of what you see here you won't need to do. The question is often asked, when do I lube the final drive unit? Do I lube that and the clutch splines, or the clutch splines and not the final drive unit? How often? How many miles? What grease? I recommend you start with the final drive unit for 3 reasons. 1. It's extremely expensive to replace at about $1,200. 2. The unit is easy to service, taking even someone that's never done it before no more than 2 hours to remove it, grease it, and put it back on. 3. There is no obvious signs to recognize at first. You get metal-to-metal contact as the grease is dried up. Wear takes place gradually over an extended period of time. Eventually what happens is you put the bike in first gear, let the clutch out, and there's a clank due to excessive driveline lash. By the time you hear this noise, a lot of damage has already been done. But in my case, it wasn't too late to salvage things. The question is often asked as to why BMW has such a high rate of driveline failures compared to other manufacturers, and I believe the answer is in the design. In the rear, the final drive unit in most motorcycles is soaking in the gear oil. BMW moved it forward, which requires it to be greased. Up front, BMW uses a dry clutch and a standalone transmission, while most manufacturers use a wet clutch, and they enclose the clutch and the transmission in the engine, so it's lubricated by the engine's oil. This is a very reliable and tried and true design that most manufacturers prefer to use. Now onto the front clutch splines. They get dry, you don't really get any damage, but what does happen is the bike becomes more difficult to shift, especially downshifting. I found if I was going under 30 miles an hour, I pulled the clutch in, I would have trouble going from 5th to 1st. After doing the lubrication, even at speeds as low as 5 miles an hour, I can pull the clutch in 5th gear and go all the way down to 1st easily. Here there's a lot of clank as you go into gear due to driveline lash. It's also due to the clutch needing more grease and so it can slide more smoothly. Basically when I put the bike in gear, and even if I let the clutch out very slowly, say I pull it in and then focus. This is the classic but less common play or slop in the gear shifter lever. My dealer gave me a quote if I brought the transmission in of $800 to open it, and then they would go up from there. So I tackled it myself. It wasn't really that difficult, and I was glad that I did. These are the little plastic caps over here, and those are the stub one here, and it lets you, flex up and get in there, obviously without the extension. And ignore my extra plastic wiring. Remember, take the caps off, loosen the nuts. You don't need to remove them. The fender will just slide out. This goes in a little hole like that, and what you do is you take it and move it out, and you put it like this outside the wall. The battery basically gets rotated. This is soft, so you can push into it like that, turn it this way, the long way, and then you're able to remove it. That's kind of back here. And like so many things on the K75, when you do it right, the way you're supposed to, it comes off with no effort at all. This little tab in the hole, that's where you put the screwdriver. A lot of people push against this part. Pushing on this, it's taking the whole thing and pushing it back a little like that. So how do you know you're doing it right? When you put the pressure on there, this just comes right out with no effort. When you put it back later, I like to spray this with a little bit of silicone. You're going to take this little part here, this hinge, you're going to put it in, and when you push it in, you're going to hear it lock as this thing here. You twist it, turning or tightening, usually loosening, and then you strike it with a hammer. It'll turn just a tiny little bit. Usually I put the screw back in the hole. See that? And that will make it a lot easier to assemble later. On this little hubcap here for the bolts, I found rather than try to pry this out, what works much better is to get in here, put a little pressure, and rotate it up and out. You want to take that starter apart, look up the procedure, and clean that starter. It's not that hard, but it's a lot easier once it's off. You're also going to want to replace the seal. If the seal's never been replaced, it's going to leak oil where it connects to the motor. That's a center stand, and you can actually tie it to like the fork around a rope or something, and that way it cannot go back and the bike cannot roll forward and come off the center stand. That's a lot easier with the fender off. Here's that all-important spacer everybody talks about. I'm going to tape it over the holes, or maybe like just tape it like that. Following a set of instructions. I find these are much better than the book because I'll have tips and more specific information. I do have the Haynes manual, it's good to have. This is by Brian Lally, and it's available on, I think it's International BMW Riders. So just dropped the exhaust. One of the things that was helpful is as I probably took off some things I didn't need to. I took this peg off. Here, someone talks about not losing a little spring for the brake or something. The rear shock off. The whole swing arm here is nothing that weighs very much at all. You get some blocks here. You'll see that I can easily pick it up and move it. You move it side to see if there's any play. Hopefully there's not. Taking this off, which is the speedometer sensor, I took the little Allen bolt out. And then as you work it up, you get here and you get here. You want to do it evenly, and you kind of need to pry it up and it comes out. Okay, just took these 4 bolts just about undone. You don't want to do them all at once or leave one somewhat tight so it keeps it in place. This little clip is going to have to go vertically like that. That's for this little grommet goes. Well, not very good news. The unit is leaking gear oil, which I could smell as I took the bolts out from the seal. And splines towards the end of it's what they're supposed to look like, and you can see at the edge of it how beat it is. And that got it free. When they talk about putting it back in, you line it up. It's not engaged while it can spin. And then it helps if you lift this up and then it goes in. Okay, so it's in. This is that little bit. Lift it up, get it on straight, and then you feel it kind of go in like that. So here I pull it out. It's actually turning the gear. I can't move it. It's in neutral. There. On the front, things looked quite a bit better. It's like more along what it should. And again, it's easier to work on this and get it in or out when it's level. And then when you lift this up an inch or two, this end right here, after lifting this part up, will just slip right out. So lift with one hand and separate with another. Here, which is capable of holding more than 1,000 pounds, so should be sufficient. It would be better to have it more steady, but I'm doing a one-man job. I use my motorcycle jack under here. Then I took the bolts for the kickstand. Then I'm going to drop this assembly down. To remove the, this is the auto-retracting clutch, this rod right here. I just took and pushed that forward, and then this just spins off with my finger. Okay, as we can see, it's bone dry. This is the input shaft to the transmission. You can see it's actually rusted. However, the splines are in excellent condition. And this goes to show you that even without lubrication, it's going to shift poorly, but usually you're not going to get any damage. Now, the dealer replaced the clutch about 5 years ago at $36,000. Now we're at $58,000, and look at the condition of this. Now, I do daily commuting, not long touring, so I do a lot of shifting. The clutch is completely dry. I don't even see grease flung around. Here's the pan. The whole thing has a leak here from the transmission, and I can see by looking at some of the Allen bolts, it looks as though someone's been in there. It almost looks like it's missing a seal or something. What I did to get it apart after taking the various, the 6 Allen screws, I forgot one, then went back and got it, and then I took and pried real gently. I tapped over around here with a hammer just lightly. I got a little space, a little crevice. I put a pry bar and just pry gently, a little on one side, a little on the other, and then I used the jack to kind of back it up slowly. I learned in this project that the transmission is not very heavy. It weighs maybe around 30 pounds.